Yesterday, my buddy Kieran referred to me as the pink torpedo. And honestly, that's so much better than any of the stupid intro jokes I've done on this channel so far. So today, the pink torpedo compares the Diezel VH4 to the Diezel Herbert. Right, the VH4 and the Herbert, two legendary amps from Diezel, probably the two main events from Diezel, their most popular and iconic amps. And I actually started this channel making Diezel comparisons because I was in the very luxurious position to have both a Mark I and a Mark II Diezel Herbert, and said buddy Kieran was curious how they compare to each other. And I made a video just for him that later I had the balls to release publicly for the guys in the Diezel Facebook group who had the same question as I and Kieran. How do they differ? And it kind of snowballed from there into a speaker thing mainly now, but I still have amps and I love Diezel amps. Diezel amps are quite polarizing, I think. I often see that people either love or hate them. I definitely love them, but a lot of people really don't like them that much, and I think that is largely down to people misunderstanding the amps due to their rarity and the celebrity player that play these amps. People expect real face-melting machines, but they're not really that. And of course, they're very rare. They're hand-built by a crew of probably less than half a dozen people in the south of Germany, real master craftsmen and master craftswomen. That makes them not cheap. I think they're priced very fairly for what they are and how they're built. But in the USA, for example, there's distribution upcharges and all that. So they're very expensive in the US. So a lot of people don't really get to experience them. And when they play them, I think often they expect something as face melting as a 5150. But they're not like that at all. There's Diezel, there's a certain feel and sound to them. It's just a lot of everything. My friend Christoph refers to them as fette Muskelschweine, which is German for fat muscle pigs. And I think that's probably the best description I've heard of a Diezel so far. But often I find it's easier to take things away from a guitar tone than add them. So Diezels really offer that. If you have a boost, you can get any tone you want out of these two amps. I find both amps are real spaceships. This one has 4 channels with resonance and presence and deep controls. This has 3 channels, one has 2 modes, but it has the mid-cut and 2 master volumes, so they're really, really versatile. So as I said, I started my channel making Diezel comparison videos, and I've pretty much compared all the big Diezel heads to each other, except for these 2 icons here. So I'm going to be using my Diezel Herbert Mark II for this shootout. The Mark I, which I also have, seems to be a little more popular. I don't think they sound too different, but I've been using the Mark II for all the other shootouts, so it's staying here. As you may or may not know, there's 3 versions of the Diezel Herbert. There's the Mark I, the Mark II, which are very, very close, and the Mark III, which is slightly different. For one thing, you can foot switch between the 2 modes on channel 2 and the Mark III, but I think they're all quite similar. I shot out the Mark I and Mark II on YouTube, and the homie Cowboy shot out the Mark I and Mark III, and they're all very much in the same ballpark. With the VH4, Diezel used a slightly different strategy. There's no Mark 1, 2, 3, whatever. However, there were slight circuit revisions throughout the years. How these were exactly, I can't say, but the amp has been continuously tweaked. This is a 2007 Diezel VH4, so it should be rather close to a new or contemporary VH4 that you could buy new today. I'll be using my KHE amp switcher to switch between the 2 amps for the shootout, and occasionally I'll be boosting the tones with this Maxon Odie 808X. I have the amps on my Marshall 1960 AV cab, loaded with an 8 ohm Selection Vintage 30 from the year 2000, mic'd up with the Shure SM57 at the sweet spot. I usually like using my Mesa oversized for these kind of videos. However, a lot of people say that the Diezels don't really like those cabs. I disagree. I think they sound great, but yeah, I just thought the Marshall cab would bite. Anyway, I just thought. I thought the Marshall cab might be a decent common ground we can all agree on. And I'm using a Biodynamic M160 as a room mic. That mic sounded great for the room sounds on my front and rear loading cab videos. So I'm using that. I might let you hear that now and then. And I might use a load box for one section, switching back and forth between those two as well. Both amplifiers have JJKT77s in the power section. Diezel fans are very particular about the power amp tubes in these amps, and some claim that there's a huge tonal difference in these amps depending on which power tube type you use. I'm not sure. I still need to test that. I'm just going to leave it at that. Both power amps are biased the same. Can't remember which exact value I set it at. Probably that one according to the service manual, but I'm not sure anymore. It's been a while. One last thing before we get started. The EQs on the channels and amps are set the way I like them. They aren't dialed to sound necessarily the same. They will sound quite similar, but the devil's in the details. The amps feel quite different. I won't be tweaking the EQs much, if at all, because that would just simply completely blow the scope of this video to bits. We'll be here for hours if we do that. And my videos are too long as it is. So let's start with the legendary channel 3 on the Diezel VH4, and then we'll go through all the channels. So the legendary channel 3 on the Diezel VH4, it's not a super modern sounding or feeling channel. It doesn't have a very fast response, not like a 5150, for example, but a little slower, more like an older Marshall, for example. Now I compared it to channel 2 on plus mode of the Diezel Herbert. I forgot to say that. I'm going to be comparing channel 1 to channel 1, channel 2 minus to channel 2, channel 2 plus to channel 3, and channel 3 to channel 4 on these amplifiers. Maybe I'll mix it a bit, not sure yet. So on both amps, both the Herbert and the Diezel, there's a lot of low end. I'm used to playing my little EVH 5150 with this cab, and the difference is quite immense. There's so much low end, there's so much heavy rumble in the room. It's a force of nature. It's really fun to play. The Herbert sounds and feels rather similar to the VH4. However, it feels a little faster. The response is a little more modern. It's less 80s and more 90s, 2000s. However, if we add a boost to both of these, it becomes quite a bit more modern. So with the boost in front, both amps are immediately transformed. They're both so much more direct and so much more modern and aggressive than they are without the amp. There are still differences in feel. The Diezel VH4, for lack of a better term, it sounds a little looser, airier, while the Diezel VH4 feels a little more compact. It's all kind of pushed together. It holds together a bit more, or a bit better. So I'd say the Herbert is definitely the more modern amp, and not surprisingly so. I think the Herbert design is about 10 years younger than that of the VH4. So let's check out the cleans. The Herbert's clean channel has more headroom. It's a really, and I think in my Diezel Herbert comparison video, I said that channel is undirtable. Compared to the Mark I Herbert, the Herbert Mark II got even more headroom on the clean channel, so it's really hard to distort. It stays very clean. However, I'd argue that the clean channel on the VH4 is more versatile. There's a few key differences. For one thing, we have a bright switch on the VH4. Going to switch to the neck pickup. It's a little more obvious there. A little more obvious there. And most noticeably, the clean channel, or channel 1 on the VH4, has a gain knob. The Herbert doesn't have that. You can We can get into that edge of breakup. That's more than edge of breakup. That's slightly distorted sounds on the channel 1 of the VH4. If we go all the way the other way. We can get very close to the clean character of the Diezel Herbert. For some reason, though, I still feel that the Herbert has a slightly more sparkly clean channel. So let's move on to the channels 2, or channel 2 on the VH4 and channel 2 minus on the Herbert. Again, both amps on these settings sound and feel very similar to each other. About the same gain levels at the same pot settings as well. Again, though, the VH4 has a bright switch on this channel. See how that is. Makes it very clangy. I prefer it off. Let's add a boost to that, just for shits and giggles. That surprised me because they both react slightly differently to the boost. The Herbert gets much more of a volume push than the Diezel VH4, but both sound and feel great with the boost. Really kicks them over the edge. Again, I describe the VH4 as a little bit more old school. It feels a little more airy, open. Again, similar to a Marshall, and I think that's how Peter Diezel started off, modding Marshall amps, so there will be some of that DNA in there. Anyway, let's move back to channel 2 plus on the Herbert and channel 3 on the VH4. Because I haven't used one feature of the Diezel Herbert in this video yet that gives it more versatility, and that is the mid-cut. Because at first the VH4 seems like the more versatile amp of the two. It has 4 fully equipped channels, so 4 EQs, 4 gain knobs, 4 volumes, and channels 1 and 2 have some voicing switches on there as well, while the Herbert just has a channel 1, a clean channel without a gain knob, and then 2 fully equipped channels, of which one has 2 gain settings. But the mid-cut gives it a whole different level of versatility, which makes it difficult for me to say which one of these amps is in fact the more versatile. But let's check out what the mid-cut does. So it scoops out a whole load of those lower mid frequencies that some might find muddy. It makes the amp sound a lot more modern. It's not just a momentary position. You can really adjust that to your own taste with the intensity knob. If we dial the intensity up, more mids go away. At this very extreme setting, all we're left with are those thundering lows and those highs. I don't really like it that much. If we go the other way, dial the intensity all down, we can use this level knob here, which we use to compensate the volume or the perceived volume loss through the loss of mids. We can use this intensity level as an additional volume. That's about where the sweet spot is for me on the intensity of the mid-cut. Let's compare channel 2 plus of the Herbert with mid-cut on to channel 3 of the VH4. And it is with the mid-cut engaged that the vocal mids of the Diezels really stick out when they're not there. I mean, in direct comparison, the VH4 had those vocal sounding mids to it that the Herbert didn't have so much anymore. So I've gone back and forth about the mid-cuts. Sometimes I prefer the amp with the mid-cut. Sometimes I prefer without the mid-cut. In any way, I prefer with a boost. From the stuff I like to play, I have to boost my Diezels. So let's turn off the mid-cut and let's move over to channels 4 and 3 respectively. So channel 4 of the Diezel VH4 is really underrated in my opinion. It's kind of doomed to live in the shadow of the legendary channel 3. So yeah, channel 4 might be used for lead sometimes, but I think it's great for rhythm tones as well. One thing that I really appreciate about Diezel amps is the string clarity. You can have gobs of gain on them, and every string will ring out audibly. There's this fantastic string separation. I love that about Diezel amps. So yeah, not just good for leads. I probably should play a crappy lead or two just for good measure. It's not my strong suit. Let's add a boost to those channels. Again, they sound similar unboosted, but if you add a boost to it, the Herbert reacts differently to it than the VH4. I think the Herbert sounds much more aggressive in the higher registers than the VH4, but both very capable of modern sounding metal tones. Let's compare channel 3 to channel 3. Yeah, the VH4 is definitely the more old school sounding amp, while the Herbert is a little more modern. To finish this off, a quick section through the low box with one of the IRs I made of this cab with this microphone. It's the one I provide with all my speaker videos. You can download it yourself. Just click any one of my speaker videos and use the Dropbox link in the description. Well, they sound even closer to each other with the low box. Yeah, I'm amazed how close they sound in the low box. The difference is a little more noticeable here in the room. However, excuse me, it is noticeable how differently they react to a boost. The Herbert reacts much stronger to the front end boost in frequency response. It gets much more high end, and the volume boost goes up, which not the volume boost, the volume goes up noticeable, which leads me to believe that these amps probably have different input stages from each other, but otherwise are very closely related to each other. Now, to pick a favorite, I couldn't really tell you. The first amp I had from Diezel was the demo, and that was not love at first chug. I needed to figure that amp out. I needed to learn it. Out of curiosity and out of first world problem disappointment over a deal for a Soldano SL30 that fell through, I found a good deal on a used Diezel Herbert Mark I. I thought, why not? Give it a try. And that was love from the first chord I struck. It was immediately my favorite amp until quite recently, until I got the Lichtlärm Audio Prometheus. I love the Diezel Herbert. And the VH4 was different again. The Diezel VH4 is more difficult to play than the Herbert. It's a little more challenging. It's not as forgiving as the Herbert is. And that is a love that has grown over time. That if you would have asked me a year ago which of these amps I prefer or which one was my favorite amp, I would have said Herbert immediately. In the meantime, I can't really decide because the VH4 really challenges you to play as good as you can to become a better player. I'm still not good. I still suck, but it's made me a better player because, yeah, it's kind of shit in, shit out. If you don't play well, it won't sound good. However, if you're playing well, whatever that means for you, we're all at different levels, the amp will reward you. While the Herbert is just a fantastic amp and it's a fun amp to play for me. So can't really decide. I'm ridiculously privileged to have both, so I don't have to decide. Yeah, the VH4, bit more old school, bit more martially than the Herbert, both uniquely Diezel-esque with ridiculous low end and loads of mids, loads of everything really. You can really sculpt these amps for your own sound. So for what it's worth, I hope this helped you decide if you had to decide between these two amps. I hope you enjoyed this video. I had fun playing these amps. I love them. And I hope that came through a bit. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye!